What if I told you that the United States may already have a plan to deal with its $37 trillion debt problem, and it doesn't involve paying it back the way you think? What if I told you that, according to senior Russian officials, the US is preparing a financial reset so subtle, so technical, that most of the world wouldn't realize it's happening until it's already too late? And what if the tools for this reset aren't tanks or sanctions, but Bitcoin, stablecoins, and digital dollars quietly spreading across the global economy? Because today, we're diving into one of the most controversial financial claims of the year. At a major international forum in Russia, a top advisor to Vladimir Putin publicly accused the United States of planning to use crypto infrastructure to devalue its entire national debt, shifting the burden onto the rest of the world while maintaining control of the global financial system. It sounds like conspiracy. It sounds extreme. But when you look at how money actually works and how history keeps repeating itself, the idea becomes far less crazy than it first appears. Before we dive in, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because this isn't just a crypto story. It's a story about power, trust, and who really pays the price when empires borrow more than they can repay. So, where did this claim come from? At the Eastern Economic Forum in Russia, one of Vladimir Putin's closest advisors, Anton Kobyakov, made a statement that immediately caught international attention. Kobyakov isn't a fringe commentator. He's been a senior advisor to the Russian president for over a decade. He basically helps with Russia's messaging at big global events. And according to him, the United States is preparing to rewrite the rules of global finance once again.
Америка прямо сейчас пытается поменять правила на рынке золота и криптовалют. Вспомните, какой у них долг – $35 триллионов.
Kobyakov claimed that the U.S. is attempting to push the world into what he called a crypto cloud, a system where digital dollars and stablecoins become embedded into everyday global transactions.
Будут решать свои финансовые проблемы за счет всего мира, загоняя всех куда? В криптовалютное облако.
Once the world is inside that system, Kobyakov says, the U.S. could effectively move its massive $37 trillion debt into digital instruments such as stablecoins and other dollar-backed tokens. Instead of having to confront the debt directly or negotiate repayment in the traditional sense, this approach allows the value of the obligations to be quietly diluted over time. By slowly devaluing it through inflation embedded in the digital ecosystem, the U.S. could reduce the real burden of its liabilities while keeping the appearance of normalcy in global markets. Essentially, the balance sheet gets reset behind the scenes without ever formally defaulting, without raising alarms, and without triggering panic among investors who might otherwise react violently to a conventional debt crisis. The key is subtlety. The system spreads the impact gradually across global holders of dollars, bonds, or tokenized instruments, meaning that while the debt technically still exists, its real-world weight diminishes as the value of the currency and instruments shifts under the radar. In other words, the debt doesn't disappear, it just quietly loses value while everyone holding dollars, bonds, or dollar-based tokens absorbs the loss. Now, to understand why this matters, we need to answer a critical question. What does it actually mean to devalue debt? Imagine the whole world is just worth a single $100 bill. Let's say I borrow all of it, right? Every single dollar. And now I owe it back. The problem is paying it back. The hard way means I have to give back the same $100. But luckily, I have a special superpower. I control the world reserve currency. So instead of repaying it back with the same $100 bill I just borrowed, I could just create another $100 bill out of thin air. Well, now the world doesn't just have $100 in circulation anymore. It now has $200, which is now trying to buy all the same things because we didn't make more stuff. So what happens next? Prices go up. Real estate, stocks, gold, groceries, everything becomes more expensive. That's inflation. And when I go to give you back your $100, It looks like I just repaid you in full. But in reality, I cheated. Your $100 now buys half as much. I devalued the debt. Now, what most people don't realize is that this is literally the oldest trick in the book. And in a lot of ways, it's how the United States has been paying for its debt for decades. This is where stablecoins come in. Stablecoins like USDT and USDC are digital tokens pegged to the US dollar, largely backed by short-term US Treasury debt. When people across the world use them for payments, savings, or remittances, they're effectively holding digital claims on US debt. They're funding America's borrowing without ever buying a treasury directly. And here's the key difference. When inflation happens inside the United States, Americans feel it immediately. Higher grocery bills, energy costs, rent, interest rates. But when digital dollars spread globally through stablecoins, inflation becomes exportable. The pain is shared by anyone holding those tokens, anywhere in the world. That's why, according to Kobyakov, stablecoins are so powerful. They extend the reach of U.S. monetary policy without the political baggage of central banks. They look private, they feel neutral. But under the hood, they are deeply tied to U.S. financial infrastructure. And this is exactly why many countries don't trust the system. Over the past few years, central banks around the world have been aggressively buying gold. The message is clear. If the future of money becomes more digital, programmable, and tied to U.S. rules, many nations would rather hold an asset that cannot be printed, frozen, or redefined overnight. History remembers what happened in 1971 when the U.S. promised dollars were backed by gold, and then suddenly changed the rules. This is where Bitcoin enters the conversation. Long before this Russian statement, billionaire investor and MicroStrategy CEO Michael Saylor publicly argued that the United States should sell its gold and buy Bitcoin, positioning it as a strategic reserve asset. His argument was blunt. Bitcoin is harder than gold, globally portable, and immune to political manipulation. Unlike traditional reserves, it cannot be confiscated, frozen, or easily devalued by government action. If adopted early, Bitcoin could recapitalize America's balance sheet, strengthen its financial position, and at the same time, undermine rival nations holding gold reserves, which have long been the cornerstone of global financial power. That exact plan never happened, at least not openly. The U.S. has repeatedly said it will not use taxpayer funds to buy Bitcoin. But here's where things get interesting. While the government remains silent, private companies have quietly been accumulating massive amounts of Bitcoin, often using corporate cash reserves as strategic investments. MicroStrategy alone holds hundreds of thousands of coins, making it one of the largest institutional holders in the world. History shows that when private innovation becomes strategically important, governments often step in later, not as pioneers, but as beneficiaries. The U.S. has done this repeatedly. Railroads, oil, semiconductors, technology. Innovation begins in the private sector, proves its value, and then is gradually absorbed into national strategy once the stakes are too high to ignore. Bitcoin may well be the next chapter in this pattern, so is the U.S. secretly planning a $37 trillion crypto reset? No one can say that definitively, but what Russia's advisor is pointing to isn't fantasy. It's a pattern. Debt devaluation through inflation, expansion of dollar demand via new technology, private systems doing what governments can't openly admit to doing, a slow, quiet shift in who actually bears the cost. Because in the end, debt doesn't disappear. It moves, and the real question isn't whether the system will change, it's who will be holding the bag when it does. As digital dollars spread, stablecoins grow, and Bitcoin inches closer to the center of global finance, we have to ask one final question. If the next financial reset happens quietly, digitally, and without a single announcement, will we even realize who paid for it until it's already too late?